Now, as we see this first minute or so of competition between McChrystal and Weaver, what do you think the approach is for both wrestlers, Jack? As we are approaching the end of this first period, the matchup between McChrystal and Weaver. McChrystal having that 2-1 lead. What'd you like out of both wrestlers?
Well,
And that will be a win by tech fall there for McChrystal. A big, strong early start for Nebraska, and that'll push us forward into the 149 weight class, where Indiana will be bringing up one of their more experienced wrestlers, the grad transfer from Princeton, Chris Perez, coming up against Nebraska's Colin Pernton. It's one of the rare matchups today where we see Indiana with the more experienced wrestler. Chris Perez is someone we spoke to earlier on this week, really looked at his mentality towards wrestling, his mentality towards leadership, because he's in an interesting situation, being that he is a grad transfer. He's got 6 years pretty much of wrestling experience, but it's hard to just captivate a room and become a leader. What did you like out of what he had to say to us?
Well,
and now with 1:17 left in this first period, we'll have another reset. Something that's always important to take note of with Perez, as we look at the replay here, is the fact that he's dealt with a lot of adversity with injuries. He's had 3 different season-ending injuries, which has allowed him to keep eligibility for pretty much what is his 6th year in wrestling. How has those injuries affected Perez's style? Big escape for Perez now, and that's going to set up a tight 1:30 left in this final period. Both wrestlers going to try and grab control of this matchup, and this is huge for Indiana.
Yeah, you're up against Berger.
But Danishek, not one that's afraid of the big moment, having a great upset victory against Purdue earlier on this season against number 12, Alex Griffin. And last week against Northwestern, having a major decision over Ben Sullivan, 14-6. But that's a quick 2 points handed out to Nebraska's Tyler Berger, as he seems to have control early on. Danishek just trying to get out of the control of Berger now. Danishek tries to get up early. Looks like he gets the escape point there, making it 6-3. Danishek fighting back with these last 18 seconds, and like you mentioned, it's important for him to try and end this period strong.
And then
2 takedown points to Berger there. Now Danishek weighing his options here with 1:25. It's important to be strategic here, trying to avoid a major decision. Remarkably strong takedown from Danishek, and now only down 9-5. Going to try and get him onto his back, I would assume, to try and get some major points and come back in this matchup. But something we definitely took notice of with Bryce Martin is the amount of close matchups he's had. He's really just been the face of chaos for the Indiana Hoosiers if you look at this lineup.
Yeah, not just close matches, weird matches as well. Well, as
you mentioned that he had a rather weird matchup against George Mason earlier on this season, actually getting his opponent to puke right in the middle of the match. What did he have to say about that? Seems like both wrestlers being very tentative, weighing out their options, trying to figure out the best time to make an attack approach, as that'll be the end of the first period. Something also important to note about this matchup, of course, Dustin Williams coming in rocking probably the best wrestling stash I've seen in my short-lived wrestling fandom. As a fan says behind me, come on, Martin, you got to make something happen. I think that's a fair statement.
Definitely a
He gets control and gets the takedown point. A major takedown for Martin and this Indiana Hoosiers team as they get pushed out of play. And Martin's going to take the 4-3 lead with 5 seconds left to go.
And that was a...
And actually, Nate Jackson appears will also be taking forfeit points.
And that is unexpected.
That is major. TJ Dudley, one of the better wrestlers in the country. We were expecting to see one of the biggest rematches all season between Jackson and Dudley, but more forfeit points going Jackson's way, and now Indiana with a 15-11 lead going into the next weight class. And it's a major matchup, of course, Studebaker being highly ranked like he is, a former 2-time NCAA championship qualifier, but Conley's a guy who's himself dealt with a lot of adversity, and we've mentioned that throughout the broadcast, that a bunch of Indiana guys have that mentality, but Conley being a walk-on after an impressive high school career, already getting into the starting lineup as a redshirt freshman is incredibly impressive, so he's definitely got the mentality to take on a guy like Studebaker. And And that's a fair approach to have against someone so talented like Aaron Studebaker, the senior from Raymond, Nebraska. One of the few actual Nebraska wrestlers on this team. When we spoke to Coach Manning before this matchup, he mentioned how Nebraska, the reason they're so prolific is they're able to recruit all across the country, including in the state of Indiana, as they have one of the better Indiana wrestlers from last season in Chad Red. That unorthodox takedown seems to be pushing this towards the line of a major decision as it's 10-2 for Studebaker. Conley going to just try and get an escape point with these last 10 seconds to try and push it back to a regular decision.